So in the last class, what we have studied was we were talking about nomenclature, and what we remember whenever we talk about giving a name, we come across two words. One is called as vernacular, and the other is called as scientific name. Right? Talking about a scientific name, we have once again. As, talking about the scientific name, there are three ways. We have talked about something called as polynomial nomenclature, trinomial nomenclature, and binomial, right? Which one is most accepted? Obviously binomial. What does binomial nomenclature talk about? It says that each and every name should be having two parts. The first part is the generic name, and the second part is the species name, and that is what is called as specific epithet, right? So now we have certain rules for writing the binomial nomenclature. I think this is a portion that you all have already studied, right? And some of the portion that you all, or some of the rules that you remember, first, it should be obviously two parts. Second, the generic name should be in capital. Specific name should be in small letter. There should not be a full stop or a comma in between, right? The name of the author should be at the last. So there are certain rules. We'll be writing about that. Just write. I think this is a part you don't need explanation, it's understood, right? Over? So rest of the laws that we have written, I think it's understood. Now we have something called as a law of priority. And out of all the laws, this law is supposed to be the most important. What does this law say? It says that, are you done, everyone? Finished writing? Okay. Right? So what does this say? It says that suppose we are talking about an organism A, right? And this happens to be an animal, right? So if this animal has been named in certain years, like suppose if it's animal, it was named in 40. There was a scientific name given to the same organism or the same animal in maybe 1900. It was given in 2024, or it was given in maybe, okay, let's do one thing. So what we are, understanding is something called as law of priority. Priority means what? Something that was given prior or at first, that is called as priority. So what I'm saying, think about a condition. Suppose we are talking about an animal, a particular animal whose names were given, right? The same animal was named for many times, right? So one scientist gave the name at this year, the other scientist gave the name of the same animal at that year. So we have a scientist C who has given the name at this year, etc., etc. And all the scientists from time to time, whoever has given the name, each and every name is supposed to be a proper scientific name. They have given the names according to the specific rules and regulation. So his name is also correct, his name is also correct. So you cannot be saying that only his name is correct and rest of the names are not correct. No, each and every name is correct. Why? Because they have followed the rules of nomenclature. But we know that organisms could just have one name. No doubt many scientists have given many names to the same organism, but out of all the names that are given, only one should be selected as a proper scientific name. So out of all this, what does the law say? Which one would be the proper scientific name? There are two conditions. First, if it is an animal, all the names given prior to 1758 is not considered. So obviously, this would be not considered. Yes or no? Right? What remains is these three. Out of these three, this is also correct, this is also correct, this is also correct. But out of these three, which one would be considered as a proper scientific name? The one that was given at the first, right? So obviously, the name that was given by this scientist at this year, this would be considered as what? The proper scientific name of this animal. And rest of the names, you cannot say that these are wrong. These are also correct. This would be called as synonym. Is the point clear? So when we are talking about naming, of an animal, all the names prior to 1758, and if you're talking about naming of a plant, all the names prior to 1753 is not valid, right? So we have to consider names that were given after 1758 and after 1753. And which name would be considered as the best name or the correct scientific name is the one that was given as the first, right? Okay, next one. Sometimes what happens is a name or the scientific name, because of certain reasons, might get changed, right? So if a name is changed, how will you identify whether that name has been changed or not? Suppose you see a scientific name like this. Suppose you see something like this, right? Whenever you see a bracket, parenthesis means bracket. Whenever you see a bracket and inside the bracket you may have the name of the author, you understand looking at this name that this name has been changed. Is the point clear? So what is the question that is asked from this part is certain names would be given and you have to identify which name has been changed. How will you identify? Looking at the bracket, right? So if anything has to be changed, the original author who has given the name should always be within brackets, right? So these were certain rules of binomial nomenclature. Anything that you did not understand, just see. I think it's understood, right? Okay. So we need to know certain terms. So we have a term called as binomial epithet. Is it understood? All the three together is called as binomial. No doubt we have three parts. What are the three parts? We have the genus name, we have the species name, and the author's name. No doubt we have three parts. That does not mean we are talking about trinomial nomenclature. Is the point clear? Last class we have spoken about trinomial nomenclature, and trinomial nomenclature also says that a name would be having three parts, right? And what would be the third part? Obviously we remember subspecies for animals and varieties for plant. But this is a name where you have a third part, but the third part talks about the author's name, right? So entire would be called as what? Binomial epithet. Next term is compound specific name. When would you consider a name to be a compound specific name? When the species name would be divided into two parts and you have a hyphen in between, right? Normally whenever we use a name, for example, if you are writing like this, Rosa indica, right? This is the generic name, this is the species name. This species name does not have two parts, it's just made up of one part, right? But there are certain names where the species name will have two parts and in between what you have is a hyphen. So whenever you look into or come across such a name would be called as what? Compound specific name. Is the point clear? So how will you identify a compound specific name? By looking at the hyphen. I think this needs no explanation. Synonym is something that we have understood. All the names that were given after the valid scientific names. And finally, we have something called as a tautonym. What is a tautonym? When the genus name and the specific name is the same, it is called as a tautonym, right? You see the generic name and the species name the same. Rattus, rattus, right? Normally, when we talk about this one and this one is different. In case of Rosa indica, both the parts are different. If both the names are the same, it is called as a tautonym. However, tautonym is not recognized by the botanist. Means what? You have only animals being named as such. You will not see any plant with such a nomenclature. So, is tautonym valid for plants? No. It is valid only for animals. Clear? So, these were the points. I think it's understood. After that, the heading would be taxonomic categories. So when we are talking about taxonomic categories, we are talking about what? Taxonomic classification, right? So whenever you know certain informations about the organism, you want to classify that organism. And what is classification? Putting all the informations into groups and subgroups is called as classification. So I think you'll remember we have talked about taxonomic classification, systematic classification, etc., right? So we are talking about, while we are going for classification, we come across certain groups. Instead of using the word group, we could be using a word called as category, right? It could be called as a category, it could be called as a unit of classification, it could be called as a rank, it could be called as a taxon also. All the names means almost the same, right? So all these are nothing but groups or categories or rank or unit of classification or taxon, right? Now the point is, while we are going for classification, how many categories do we see here? 7. Right? And what is the question that is asked from this part is obviously the sequence, right? Whenever we talk about the sequence of arrangement, I think it's better you remember this line so nothing gets jumbled, right? So whenever we are talking about such a type of arrangement, especially genus and species, I don't think there's a confusion between these two. We understand that genus comes first and species comes after, right? Talking about kingdom and phylum also, kingdom is obviously the highest category, after that it comes phylum. So where does the confusion lies is this tree, right? Class, order and family, which comes first? So if you remember this line, it will become easier. And the question always is asked on that only. Arrange it properly, right? Okay, talking about this 7 categories, no? Okay, another word that you need to remember is phylum or division, right? Division in case of plants and phylum in case of animals. So this is something that we know. We'll write certain points about it. Yeah. Difference between? Unit of classification is? Taxon or species. Species is a taxon, right? So we have words, category, taxon, then we have unit of classification, everything means the same. So if you're talking about genus, genus could be considered as a category. The organism inside genus would be considered as a taxon. So we'll be writing about that point a little later, okay? But as of now, each and everything is nothing but a taxon. You can, if you are talking about taxon in general, without seeing the difference between taxon and category, there is a difference between the two words. But generally, what we say is each and every category could be called as a taxon also. It could be called as a category, it could be considered as a rank also. It means almost the same, but there's a slight difference, okay? We'll be writing about it. So what we have written, classification is not a single step process, it involves hierarchy of steps. Hierarchy means what? Ascending order, or we can talk about descending order also, right? So we have steps that are arranged in an ascending order, right? So these are the things that we are talking about. These are in steps. The steps could be also be called as what? Rank or category. So as far as this system is concerned, or taxonomic hierarchy is concerned, who has given it first? It was Linnaeus. But if you see, Linnaeus, when he has started the system, his way of classification had only 5 rank or 5 categories. However, nowadays, how many do we have? 7, right? I think it's over. Okay, we are talking about taxonomic categories. How many categories do we have? We have 2 words associated with that. One is obligate and the other is intermediate. Obligate means we are talking about the main categories. How many categories have we seen? We have seen 7, right? It is not like this that we have just 7 categories. We also have some others, and altogether they will be called as what? Intermediate. And by the word intermediate, what do you understand? Something that comes in middle, right? So if you're talking about, maybe if you talk about this one, right? Suppose, let's talk about family. Family is an example of intermediate or obligate category. Obviously obligate category, but you might be having something called as subfamily that comes below family, and you might be having something called as superfamily also, that will come above the family, right? So subfamily, superfamily, everything together would be called as what? Intermediate. Similarly, it goes with class also. You might have subclass for a certain species. You might have a superclass also. So anything that comes in between the obligate categories would be called as what? Intermediate categories. So what is the number of obligate categories? What is the number of intermediate categories? I think both the terms are understood now, right? Okay. So since we understood this point, now, at the starting of the note, what we have said, the words like rank, category, unit of classification, taxon, step, everything means the same. But this point talks about a slight difference between the word taxon and category. What is the difference? First time, what did we say? Everything means the same. It is nothing but a step. It is nothing but a group, right? But here, we are talking about something different. No doubt taxon and category in general, it means the same, but what is the difference? Taxon means the real organisms that is within that group. If I use the word out of this, let's consider genus. What is genus? A group. If it is a group, within that group, we have organisms also, right? What is a family? A group of genus, right? What is, okay, let's come with the smallest one. We know what a species is. What is a species? Is it a single organism or it's a group of organisms? When we are talking about taxonomical hierarchy, right, or we are talking about taxonomical category, the lowest unit is obviously species. What is species? What is species? Definition-wise, we understand, right? But the first point is, it represents a single organism or it is a group of organisms. Similarly, genus is a single organism or it's a group of organisms. Obviously, groups of organisms, right? So when we talk about species, this entire group would be called a species and we would have organisms in here, right? If you're talking about genus, same type of species together would form a group. That group would be called as genus. So when we are talking about this group, the group would be called as what? Category. And all the living organisms within that group would be called as what? Taxon. Are you understanding the difference between taxon and category, right? The living organisms inside the group. You have this classroom. The classroom is a category. Y'all are taxon. Clear? Next point. Again, two important lines when we are talking about taxonomic category. First line we understood. Next, higher the category, higher is the number of organisms and fewer would be a number of common characters, right? What we are talking about is okay. So this is something that we know. So the more you go up, the number of organisms would always be more, yes or no? Because when we are talking about a species is a group that consists of what? Organisms that are closely related with each other, right? So we are talking about, suppose we are talking about this species and we have A, right? So this is a group with all A. So this would be species A. Right? Next, we have the next category that is called as genus. So what is genus? Something that you have already studied. So what is a genus? A group of same species or similar species would be called as genus. In nature or on this earth, it's not like this that we have a single species. We might have another group, cat, dog, etc. We might have something like this. We might have different species, right, in nature. So these are respective species. The next higher group would obviously be genus. So if all the species or if some species has to come within this group called as genus, what is considered is, if suppose these organisms and these organisms almost have many similar points together or they are closely related, then A, this group and this group would form genus. Is the point clear? Why is this and this not included in this genus? Because they do not have or they are not closely related, right? We have a group where we have organisms of the same type, they will be forming a species, right? In nature, we have different species. So next higher group would be something called a genus. Who would be included in the genus? Is closely related species would be included in the genus. So what is genus? A group of related species, right? So in nature, we have many species. The ones that are closely related would fall under a group, and that group would be called a genus. So as compared to this individual group and this group, obviously the number of organisms in this group is more as compared to this one individually, yes or no? So the higher you go up, the number of organisms in that group would always be more, right? So if you have 10 species here, you will have maybe, obviously, greater than 10 in the genus group, right? Next is, what is family? Group of genus forms family. So I think the first point is understood. As you go higher up, the number of organisms keeps on increasing, right? Come to the next one. Higher the category, fewer would be the number of common characters. Means what? Coming back to this, if you're talking about this as a single species, all the organisms belonging to this group, this one, this one, this one, this one, everything closely related, right? If you're talking about genus, they will be having two such species, right? All the organisms that belongs to this group will be more similar as compared to this one and this one together. Yes or no? If you're talking about this group, the organisms in this group almost looks the same, right? They are common in nature, or they will have common characteristics. If you're talking about the next higher group, the next higher group will have individuals like this also, individuals like this also. So this and this will be less common. Organisms among this will have more common characters, yes or no? Because everyone is A. So what does this denote? It denotes that everyone looks the same. Or maybe they will have common characters. So the 2 points that we are talking about is, the higher we go up in a taxonomical hierarchy, the number of organisms keeps on increasing, but the number of common characters keeps on decreasing. So highest common character would be in this group, lowest common character would be in this group. Is the point clear? Highest number of organisms would be in this group, lowest number of organisms would be in this group. Are the 2 points clear? Okay. Next is, anyone, did you all bring the NCERT book? Yes or no? Okay, even if you have forgotten to bring it, if yeah, you brought it, just open that page, taxonomic categories, that section. The section that has taxonomic categories, you have a chart there, table. No, in the chapter called is Living World, just open and go to the portion where taxonomic categories is written. Go back, yeah, go back. Yeah, that chart, this one. Page number, yeah. What is the page number? 11. You all did not bring? Okay, so whenever you are talking about this part of the chapter, you have to refer to that chart. Okay, chart that is given in page number 11. Table 1.1 or what? Is the point clear? So this is something that you have to by heart. This is a table that talks about what? There are certain organisms whose name or scientific name, it belongs to which class, it belongs to which order it has been given, right? So question has been asked on each and every column and each and every, row. So each and everything, I think there are 4 examples that are given. 4 or 5, 4 organisms, right? So all the 4. So maybe the question could be asked, mango belongs to which order, right? Or you have example of housefly also, the class of housefly, right? So that is a chart that you need to remember. Since it's there already in the NCERT book, we are not going to write it there, right? So you will study it from here, book itself. Okay. So each and every category we need to study in details. Okay, do you all know the definition of a species? What is a species? No, it's a group, but we have a definition for species, no? Capable of interbreeding among themselves. Obviously, that word is the most important word while we are defining species. However, we have to talk about words like they are morphologically related, right? They are genetically related also, means they have the same gene pool, right? So when we are talking about the species, the important words that you need to remember, the term species was given by, plus it's a group of naturally interbreeding population, means what? They can reproduce amongst themselves, right? Next is they share a common gene pool. Their genetic makeup is the same. right? As far as the number of chromosomes is concerned in a species, it will always remains the same, right? We know that chromosome number varies from species to species. In case of human beings, how many do we have? 46. Yes or no? 46 we have. So depending on species to species, genetic makeup is the same, obviously morphologically same, anatomically same, etc., right? Next, reproductively isolated means members of the same species will only reproduce amongst themselves. Cat will reproduce with a cat itself, not with a dog. So they are isolated from other species. And since they are isolated, we use a word called as, it forms a genetically closed system, because members of the same species reproduces amongst themselves and they will not be reproducing with other species, right? If suppose a cat reproduces with another, suppose a cat reproduces with a dog, then that would be an example where members of two different species would reproduce or mate amongst themselves. In that case, that example would be considered as a genetically open system. But since here we are talking about what? Reproductively isolated, a term that is related with species. So species is considered as genetically closed system because members of the same group only reproduces amongst themselves, right? We have given certain examples of species. I think it's over. So what is a genus? A group of related species is called a genus. Since we know all these things, we are not writing the sentences, right? So we have given examples of genus. The two examples that we have given, we have talked about something called as polytypic genus. We have two words, one is called as polytypic, the other is called as monotypic. Not necessary, in each case, every genera would be consisting of many species. If suppose we are talking about Rosa indica, this is a genus that will have only one species. You have just one flower that has been named as such, right? You have just one genus that has only one species, that is indica. So if a species has many, if a genus has many species, such type of a genus would be called as what? Polytypic. If a genus has only one species, that would be called as what? Monotypic. Clear? Next, Likha. So when we talk about family, family is a group that consists of many similar genus, right? So we have given an example of a family, Solanaceae, that belongs or that consists of so many related genus, right? So we are giving two examples, one in the plant group and the other in the animals group, right? So 4 similar genus belongs to one family, Solanaceae. Solanaceae is a family that belongs to plant kingdom or animal kingdom, obviously plant kingdom. And animal kingdom also, we are giving an example of a family, that's Felidae. It has How many genus? 2 genus. Panthera, all the things that we have written, right? Whenever we talk about genus, either the genus could be polytypic or it could be monotypic also, right? So if you're talking about Panthera, Panthera is an example of polytypic genera. Groups of related genera would form what? Family. So groups of related genus forms what? One single family. Is the point clear? Okay. One point that I did not did not explain. Okay. When we were writing about families, there is one point that we have marked it down, right? So that is the point on which the question has been asked. Families are characterized on the basis of what? On the basis of both vegetative and reproductive characteristics. Means when you are making a group, what is a family? Nothing but a group. So when you are making a group, you will take into consideration certain points. So what are the things that you study before making that group? You study the reproductive feature of the organism, you study the vegetative feature of the organism, right? So that group is based on the reproductive and vegetative features. Such a line is related only with family and no other categories. So that is the one line that you have to remember in the entire taxonomy category section, right? Because the question would never be asked as such, order is characterized by dash. There is no such line that it will study, but it will always study family is characterized by. Are you understanding? The question would never be asked as genus is characterized by, right? Order is characterized by. But the question that is asked is family is characterized by. Family is characterized by the vegetative and the reproductive characters. Clear? I think I have given. I did not give. Just go through the note. Because there are certain, obviously the suffix would be talking about the taxonomic categories, right? I did not give it before. Okay, just remind me in the next class. I'll give it, okay? Now, today, since almost the time is over, so we'll be writing about suffix. So, just write it somewhere so that I can remember, okay? So what we are discussing is taxonomy categories, and we have started from species, right? Since the time is over, so we'll be discussing only till order. In the next class, we'll be talking about the rest of the taxonomy categories, all right? Up till here, is there any point that you all did not understand? I think it's understood, but what is the thing that you need to study from this point is only the examples, right? All the examples that are given in your NCERT book, especially that chart that I have said, right? And all the examples here. I think that's all for today. Thank you.